Real estate successes before the age of 21. It doesn't seem possible, does it? Well, it is. And we've got two proofs of concept here, right here on the Fearless Investor Podcast. We're going to talk to Scott Farrow and Cade Barrett. Hey, welcome into the Fearless Investor Podcast. You're listening to me, Kyle Stanley. And if you're on the YouTube channel, make sure that you subscribe and comment on this video. If you're on the podcast, make sure that you are subscribed to that as well and you're reviewing. Need those 5-star reviews. Would love to be able to continue to grow those reviews so more people can get reached with the podcast. But really appreciate you listening today. And I'm excited today because Cade Barrett and Scott Farrow both became real estate successes before they were even of the drinking legal age, which is just crazy for me to think, because when I was 21, I was thinking about becoming a sports broadcaster and thinking to myself, oh yeah, I got to be okay with like $15,000 to $20,000 a year of income in the beginning. Meanwhile, these guys are hitting that in like a month for a couple months here in the last year. They're doing amazing things. And the thing that I really want you to be able to see today is no matter what age you are, if you're 20 years old, if you're 80 years old, anywhere in between, the things that they did to become successful, it doesn't matter what age you are. In fact, if you are older and you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm not 20 years old, so I can't reverse the clock. If you are older, I think you actually have an advantage over these guys. But if they can do it, you can do it. And if you are younger and you're listening to this, this is the proof of concept that you need to know, that you don't have to you don't have to save a bunch of money. You don't have to have a bunch of money. You don't have to have a bunch of knowledge to get into real estate. You just have to have the right game plan, the right mentorship, and the right mindset in order to become successful here. So without further ado, let's jump into it with Scott Farrow and Cade Barrett to learn how they became real estate successes before the age of 21. Hey guys. All right. So this one is a different format. You're not coming in. If you're watching on the YouTube channel, you're noticing that you're not seeing any of these three faces that we're about to talk with. But if you're listening on the podcast, you're probably like, wow, it sounds really clear. It sounds a lot better than Kyle's mic usually. Well, that's because I'm with Scott Farrow and Cade Barrett. We're at the Keller Williams office where they have super high-tech technology here with the podcast stuff. So we're going to jump into this, but wanted to set the platform or the tone of why we're coming in a different way. But guys, thanks so much for being on.
Thanks for having us, Kyle. Thank you.
Yeah, this is an awesome office too. How you guys liking working here so far?
It's really good. I've really enjoyed, we've had a lot of opportunity to speak with really high level investing and high level sales. And we've really enjoyed the facility as well. It's been really awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, let's get into it as always. Okay. For those that are listening right now, 21 and 22 years old, Scott's 22, Cade's 21. They're killing it in real estate. Cade just got his real estate license, about 4 months ago?
Back in January, so about 6 months ago,
so
almost 7 months ago.
Wow,
yeah.
That's awesome. And Scott has been a realtor for how long? 2 years, and also doing some investments. Now you're both doing some investments out of state. But before we get into that, most interesting real estate investing stories in your young career so far?
Yeah, so this actually just happened late last week. Joe, another member of the Clayson Group here at Keller Williams, we were actually working the same lead without knowing. So I had gone out to the appointment, met with the seller out in downtown 93704. Joe had done the same thing. He went out on the appointment a couple of days later. We come back and we realize, oh shoot, we just met with the same person. So how do we, navigate this moving forward? So we decided we wanted to partner when we put in an offer. Our plan was to flip it. So we put in our offer, didn't hear back for the seller for a couple days. Okay. And the seller comes back and says, yeah, we have an offer, about 10 to 15 grand higher than you guys. So I think we're going to go with that. So we were really conservative on our numbers. And we said, well, let us go back, let us pencil out the numbers a little bit, and then we'll give you a call back. So we pencil out our numbers. We call this guy back and, we say, instead of gutting the whole place like we usually do, we're going to do just some cosmetic stuff. If we were to come up and match that offer, would you be open to getting the deal done today? And the seller's kind of going back and forth, and he's like, no, probably not. I probably need about $5,000 higher than what you need in order to get the deal done. And we're like, I don't think we can do $5,000. How's an extra $1,000 if we can come up $1,000 from the other offer? And the guy was not budging.
Really?
So he left. We ended up negotiating a little more. I think we offered him $2,000 extra from the other offer, and he just didn't want to take it. So he left $2,000 on the table to take the other offer. So Joe and I were a little bit bummed, but I think the biggest thing we learned from that is you can't make it emotional. There's still going to be more deals to come. Yeah. But yeah, it was just kind of disappointing a little bit just to see that this guy had left $2,000 on the table.
So good though that you went with the numbers and you didn't go with emotion. I mean, so many people would just be like, "Oh, I'm so close. This has got to be a deal. I'll just make it a deal." So that's good that you did that. Scott, how about you?
Mine's a little bit less professional. Right when I got started in the business, I was helping with a property down in Southeast Fresno, and it wasn't like the nicest area. Honestly, I've seen worse now, but I was like real nervous. And I remember getting to the house, and the front door was supposed to be plywooded over, and the plywood was ripped off and on the front lawn.
Okay.
And I thought to myself, that's not good. And my only task was to take photos of the house so we could get remodel estimates. And I walked in, and right when I stepped on the carpet, I realized it was wet.
Oh, gosh.
And I was like, oh, no. I looked down, and it was water.
Okay.
But there were footprints leading into the back of the house and not coming back out. So I knew that somebody would be back there. And I was like, oh, what do I do? What do I do? And so I thought at 19, I was like, I'll be brave. I'll take the photos. What if somebody heard?
Just you there.
Just
right?
me.
Oh, gosh.
And this is the first time in the neighborhood. And anybody who knows me, I'm not the most intimidating person. So I'm like, okay, if I'm in a fight or flight situation, I'm running. And so I got some photos of the front, and I went and looked around, and I decided, you know what? I'm here for a job. I'm going to do it. So I realtor, and I'm like, I'm going to play the friendly guy. So I'm like, if you're here, not a big deal. Just need to take a quick photo of the house. And ended up having a real close encounter with a homeless person, and I took off, and he ran the other way. But it scared me to death. And so nowadays, if I know somebody's in there, I just kind of leave it be. I let the pros, like the cops or somebody, deal with it. But it was an interesting lesson to learn early on.
It's a good call. Well, there's a big homeless issue here in Fresno too. Mm-hmm. So my third flip, I think, ever, I was dealing with homeless people, and I had to pay them just to get out of there. So
you know what, you got to do what you got to do. I had a homeless person break in 3-4 times and paint all my windows black on one of my most recent stuff that I'm working on. And oh well,
you're like, why couldn't you paint the walls? The paint's right there. It's in a can.
Right. You could have done it. Could have painted it.
Guys, I'm excited for you to be on the show today, because most of my guests and my audience knows, usually we're talking about, hey, you had this really, career that wasn't really fulfilling you, and you did it for 4 or 5 years, and you were just scrounging by. You were going paycheck to paycheck, and then you found real estate. And you guys found real estate as teenagers and dedicated yourself to it right away. So I'm excited for a couple reasons. I'm excited for the young audience member right now that's listening and wow, if they can do it, I can do it. But at the same time, the person who's maybe kind of feeling man, I've been in this career for a long time, and I'm scared to leave. And they hear your stories, and they're like, wait, if those guys can do it, then I can do it too. So I think your stories are really going to give a lot of people hope today. So let's start there. Let's start with your story. So either one of you that wants to start out, what was so attractive to you about real estate, and what kind of deals have you done so far? Just kind of bring people up to speed.
Yeah. So I actually started, learning and wanting to learn more about real estate back in high school. So I had always known, even when I started high school, I didn't really fit the mold for a 9-to-5 job. I knew that wasn't something that excited me and that I really wanted to get into. So the first book I picked up was Manny Koshman's $100 Million Real Estate Playbook.
Cool.
He's an investor out of LA area. So read that book, and I'm like, holy crap, I am super pumped. I just want to keep learning more. So all throughout I followed him on Instagram. I started, reading some more real estate books, and I'm like, okay, well, all this is kind of great, but I'm not, I haven't really done anything. I'm not really, getting anywhere with it. So second year of college, real estate was in the back of my head, still at Fresno State right now, but I was actually at a networking event for the university, and a woman came up to me after the event when we were all networking, and she was like, wow, because I had given a speech, and she was like, wow, you did a great job speaking, kind of, what do you want to do? And that it kind of caught me off guard because for some reason I had never really been public and vocal about how I really wanted to get into real estate, but for some reason I was like, I'm gonna tell her I want to get into real estate.
Yeah.
So it came out of my mouth and I was like, oh shoot, okay, well. Turns out she said, well, my son, he's got a team over at Iron Key Real Estate. They're thinking about hiring an assistant. And I was like, shoot, give me his card. I'd be more than happy. I want to reach out. So long story short, I end up getting in contact with Benny Clay, one of our team leaders here at the Clayson
This was Benny's
Group.
mom?
This was Benny's
How
mom.
funny.
Yeah. So it's funny how kind of all the stars aligned like that. When I think about it, her and I laugh, and it's just like, it's crazy how kind of the stars aligned like that.
Just to put in perspective for people, Benny is partnered with Jason for the Clayson Group here in Fresno, which is one of the biggest investment / real estate groups in Fresno. So the first person that you talk to ends up being one of the biggest real estate names in Fresno's mom. That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. So... like I was saying, long story short, started as an assistant with the team back January of 2019, and then just got licensed, like we were saying earlier, about almost 7 months ago, January of this year. So a year later, and the rest is history, man. So I'm pumped for the future. I know Scott and I are pumped about some stuff we got going on right now. But yeah, that's kind of my background, my story.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Cade. Scott?
Yeah, very different story. I went to college for about 2.5 years, and I went to Fresno State. I kind of went backwards. I didn't like that, so I went to Fresno City, and I didn't like that. And so I went and I took a semester off. I was running a graphic design business kind of on the side and working at Cup of Joy. Happened to run into Benny, and kind of things aligned very similarly. And I, at that point, didn't know what a real estate agent was, and I was 19. And so 6 months later, I had been working with Benny, and I got my real estate license, and I started selling houses. And over the last 2 years, I've, mostly done a lot of resale and whatnot, but I've done a few flips. I've helped a lot of other people doing flips too, so I'll help manage the acquisition and the wholesaling side as well. But now starting to get really into trying to get into buy and hold and looking in out-of-state area, and still helping other people in our area buy and sell.
That's awesome. So I know you've been in it a little bit longer than Cade. And so Cade's, do you feel like you're kind of looking into the future by seeing Scott, what he's been doing?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't only see him as a friend, but he's basically kind of like a role model to me too. Cause you're going to
make me cry.
No, I
told him to say that.
Without getting too sentimental. But I think it's good to have somebody who is farther along, and, me being able to look up to them and kind of be like, challenge me and push me to be better and get better. And get to that level as soon as I can. 100%.
Yeah. Scott, talk about some of the success. I want people to hear some of the numbers. I think you just did a meetup with Jason, and you quantified it. Yeah. So let's hear the success here.
Yeah. So it's important to not really look at just all the numbers too. When it comes from when I started to now, there was ups and downs. I told my story more in depth, and it's on Facebook. Things started off really great. I started off with a big bang, sold, a couple million right at the very start. Wow. I saw a lull in the business and kind of watched my savings accounts dwindle and started to feel the pressure of kind of that need to eat. It played a big part. And so after 6 months, I ended up getting a second job at Ruth's Chris, working tangentially selling real estate. Mm-hmm. But over the last year, my business has taken off. About this time last year would have been about 2 months into Ruth's Chris. But by last year, at the end of the year, I let go of that position.
That's great.
And I've been full-time real estate. Last 6 months, just made a bit over six figures.
That's amazing.
Really set myself in a successful spot where now I'm able to do a lot of the things that I wanted to do. And I feel a lot better about everything because I start to realize that this is a very possible career path and an opportunity for me to also teach my friends and my family and the people that I care about ways that you were talking about on our podcast about creating passive income and not having to work that job that maybe they don't want to.
Yeah.
So it's been awesome.
That's good. So you got your license when you were 20?
19.
19. Okay. Towards the tail end of being 19?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
right before.
Close to 20. And then here we are basically just over 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
in the last 6 months, you have made over 6 figures. Most people don't make 6 figures in 2 years doing what they're doing. Do you get just like how unique your situation is?
I didn't until recently.
Yeah.
And in fact, I just took a week off from work, not really off from work, but stepped away, and I went to Denver and I spent some time out of the area. And I kind of realigned in a lot of ways, and I was thinking to myself like, oh, I need to make more and I need to do this. And I came back feeling a lot more like, wow, I'm in a very, very optimistic situation.
Yeah.
And really what that led me to do is work on humbling myself in a way, because when you start making good money and you start feeling like, oh, I'm on top of the world, I can do this and I can do that. Sometimes you let your head get out in front, and then it humbled me a little bit, and it allowed me to just be grateful. And so I've been able to now repay people that have really helped me in the past. So it's been really awesome.
That's awesome. I talked about it when I was on your podcast, but I felt like for at least 10 years, I was putting $100,000 effort in and getting, I mean, my best year was $75,000. So I didn't make 6 figures till I was 32 years old. Did you have a 6-figure year last year?
No.
You were close though. I remember you saying you were
I got fairly close, but I really blew it out of the water this year.
And that's the thing is, I just want people to understand this. Like, I was 32 years old having my first 6-figure year, and you were 21 almost having your first 6-figure year. So I mean, like, that's the power of real estate here. Like, that's what's so crazy to me is that, you know, people get, and I know for me, pride got in the way when I owned a business. I owned it for 6 years, and I was just dead set on, I cannot let this fail. I cannot let this fail. But it wasn't because I wanted the success. It was because I didn't want to fail. It's because I didn't want people thinking like, oh, I quit early, and for that reason, like, Kyle's not successful. So the desire to be successful has always been there. But like, seeing someone like you do this in such a short amount of time, and then seeing like Cade's already on you're already on.
Cade will shortcut that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so this is super inspiring for people. So where do you feel like in the age that you are, most people are not thinking about being successful. They're still in college. They're thinking about the next party. They're thinking about, oh, how am I going to get my first job? And especially right now with everything going on, like, there's nothing that's for certain. So talk to those people right now, Cade. Like, where do you feel like you're getting that different mindset? Where does that come from versus most people your age?
I think the biggest part is surrounding yourself with the right people.
Awesome.
I know, I don't know the specific phrase, but you know,
you're
like
the average of the 5 people you're
Yep.
surrounded by the most.
There it is. So I think 100% that's the biggest part of where it's coming from, because if you're surrounding yourself with those people who, you know, negative thoughts, not thinking about, you know, being successful, wanting to be successful, I mean, you're not going to be thinking those thoughts, and you're not going to be getting there anyway. So a big part is surrounding yourself with the right people. With me, personally, it's 100%, you know, started with the team, still is the team, Benny, Jason, all of us here. And then obviously at the meetups, just networking and surrounding yourself with the right people. I'd say that's 100% where it comes from.
That's probably too, Scott, why you didn't even realize that you're making a lot of money, is because you're surrounding yourself with people.
I don't
that are
make a lot of
making
money.
7 figures.
Yeah, I don't make a lot of money around the people I hang out with.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal. So what would you say to someone right now that wants to be where you guys are at? It doesn't matter what age they are. How do they get around those right people?
One, decide what field makes you happy. 2, surround yourself with the successful people in that. And the way that you surround yourself with successful people in the field that makes you happy is provide a service that benefits their life, and they will give back.
Add value. That's why I started my podcast. I literally, a good friend of mine who's now a mentor in my life, and I'm in his mastermind. His name's Travis Chappell, and he talked about add value to people. And I was like, well, I'm really good at, like, this was right when I started real estate, and I didn't know how to add value to anyone in real estate, but I knew how to make videos. And so I started reaching out to guys being like, hey, what if I made you a video? And no one really wanted that. But then someone gave me the idea of like, well, what if you started like a YouTube channel or a podcast and had people on and let them get their name out there? I was like, oh, that could be of great value. And so that's the way I found to give value. So what were the ways that you found to give value to people?
Yeah. So Mine started with design. I started in the real estate resale market, and I have a knack and a passion for design. And so
Nice.
marketing, online marketing, social media marketing, print marketing. And so that's kind of how I started. And then really what brought a lot of value that really I think increased my education and what they could give back to me was I had an urge to learn as quickly as possible in the best way possible how to how to take down deals myself. So within 4 or 5 months, I was taking 2 different mailer list phone calls, and I was cold calling. And so
Nice.
that's something that a lot of bigger investors just don't like to do.
Yeah.
It's not that they can't do it, and I bet that they could have actually done it better than I could have when I was learning. But I provided value of just energy and persistence and time.
And I remember one time you said you made like 483 calls in one day or something.
More than
like
that.
Yeah. What's the most calls you ever made in a day?
At one point, we were calling like over 1,000 people a day between
Nuts.
2 of us.
Yeah, I will pay anyone to do that. I will never do that. I get exhausted after 10.
Mm-hmm. And it is exhausting, and that's
Yeah.
a good way of putting it. It's a muscle group you got to really work on, and the hardest part of cold calling that many people is the repetition of it.
Yeah.
Being able to say in the exact same tone of voice, "Hi, is Kyle there?" Great.
Yeah.
And going through the script. But
Shot of espresso between every call.
yeah, I'm a caffeine addict for anybody who doesn't know that. But yeah, so I think one of the ways that anybody who is listening to this could provide value is through enthusiasm, time, and dedication.
That's great.
And you don't have to have a skill set to have any of those.
Okay. Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest part would be which is the first thing Scott said, was finding something or the industry that excites you. And, to a lot of outside people, real estate looks like this big shiny diamond, right? It just looks like, oh, wow.
Right.
All these people are making a crap ton of, I could just hop in and I could be like that,
Right.
like that. But there's a lot of the nitty gritty BS, tedious tasks, cold calling being one of them. That is a great way to get some introductory experience doing. I mean, that's how I started. I started as an assistant doing all the nitty gritty stuff, stuffing envelopes, driving down to the probate court, getting all the probate cases for our investments. It's all this tedious stuff that people don't know goes into it, but you're so much better off after the fact because you know what goes into it. You know what it takes. So I think, that's a big part of it.
That's awesome. That's really cool. So transition a little bit. You guys are doing some deals together out of state, which is super interesting to me. We were just talking about a deal in Indiana. Maybe you want to break that one down for us. But before we do go and get into that, why are you looking out of state?
Yeah, so let's do that. Cade and I were talking outside in the parking lot at like 7 p.m. about a month and a half ago. And we were talking about we want to start establishing long-term wealth, and we were both happy that we're making some income, and we're both happy that we're living lives that we feel comfortable with and happy with, but we both were like, what can we do to set ourselves up for the future? And that was rentals, and we decided, do we want to rent here in town or do we want to have something out of state? And the reason why we chose out of state was price of entry. So houses in other places can be cheaper, and the rents may not be affected the same way by the house price. So maybe the rents are similar, but the house is a quarter of the price.
Yeah, that's great.
2, we have limited liability. We don't have kids. We don't have families. We don't have houses that we could lose, huge car payments. So we have the ability to be risky or more risky than a lot of other people.
Cool.
And then 3, it was something that we felt like our team wasn't doing yet, and it was somewhere where we could start bringing value to our friends and family, where if we do the legwork, we can finally bring back to you and to Jason and to all of our friends, hey, look, this is a market that we found works, and here's how we did it, and we can replicate it.
That's awesome. I think that's so huge, is that you see that right now as being a way to be able to bring value to other people, and not just kind of like what I was talking to you guys about is when I first got an Airbnb, I was kind of like, oh, I can't tell anyone about this because this is like gold. And for you to be able to say, no, like eventually I'm going to share this with my team because it's going to be a service to them too. That's really cool that you guys already are seeing that. So Cade, break down the deal for me.
Yeah. So
let's just start with the deal is not locked up. So this is
okay.
a bit taboo.
Okay.
But we're going to talk about it anyway.
By the time I air this, you'll already be.
We should be in contract.
You'll have your first check by the time.
So I want to talk just briefly, real quick, about how this deal even really came into fruition, right?
Yeah.
Because talk is just talk, right? I mean, Scott said, parking lot 7 p.m. after a long day at work. We're just kind of BSing about, all this stuff, wanting to build a better future for ourselves.
It was in like a Rick and Morty type of situation. It was like, Morty, we got to get all these rentals, Morty. I'm not sure how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it, Morty. 7 more years.
So we had really no idea where to start, but we knew we had to start somewhere, and we needed to not just let the talk be talk.
Okay.
So we're like, okay, Monday morning, we're coming in 6:30 a.m. We're coming in, an hour and a half, 2 hours before we normally would come in, and we're going to dedicate that time to researching out-of-town markets and just diving in head first. So we were actually looking at the calendar yesterday, and we have put in probably about 20 hours over the course of 10-ish days since we first had, this kind of idea.
This was over a month ago, but I was out of town for a week. Cade had a surgery.
Yeah. So about 20 hours worth of work. We're coming in the mornings. We're literally just starting on Zillow. We're looking up out-of-town markets on Zillow. We're looking up
Google Maps, looking at the neighborhoods.
Nice.
What's for sale? What are rents like in this area? We're clicking on what's for rent in these neighborhoods. And Jason does have some properties in the South Bend area.
Right.
So we're like, okay, we're definitely going to, look at that market, but we're also going to look at some of these other markets too and just see what we find. So we narrowed it down to South Bend because we found this package of 4 properties thrown up on Zillow for $160,000 being sold as a package. And we're like, okay, we're gonna crunch these numbers.
What kind of condition?
They look like actually not terrible.
Okay.
And we were expecting some repair work.
Right. Well, for that price, $160,000 would get you basically a single family home in Fresno. So that's
So let me break down Indiana for a second.
Yeah.
South Bend, Indiana is located just outside of Notre Dame, and South Bend kind of got more popular when Pete Buttigieg, the mayor, ran for president. But it is a kind of a workers, kind of a town, and it's not tiny, but it's not like a Fresno or anything like that. The average sales price, this played a big part, was fairly low, probably between 50 to 100 or so.
Really?
Yeah. So average houses are actually pretty cheap over there, depending on the area. So they're nice areas, right? And you're going to pay a lot, but where we were looking, it made sense. And then we also were looking at population growth, economic diversity,
Gotcha.
and we were trying to read larger metrics as well.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
Yeah. So there we are, with $160,000 for 4 properties. We've got our little, Google sheet with all our, offer formula. What can we do with the rents like this? Counting for vacancies and property management and all this sort of stuff. So we see that the numbers don't work at 160, which, no really big surprise there for any investor who's looking at properties on Zillow.
Right.
Rarely the listing price going to work for you if you're trying to get it for an investment.
At least in these days.
Yeah. So then we just start messing with the numbers a little bit. We do a little more research on average rents. This was before we had gotten the official rents from the landlord. And, we find that we're probably going to need to be, $40,000 under listing price is probably where we want to be if we were to take these on. So we got connected with another broker in Indiana who Jason has actually recommended and has done business with. And she's been great for us. And we know that the rents are actually a little bit under market value, probably around, $100 to $150 under market rent.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know if I missed anything. Did I miss anything?
Yeah. So what happened was we ended up running numbers on a whole bunch of different houses. We went so far as calling for sale by owners and talking to them, and we tried everything. Well, we ended up talking with the listing agent for a bit and got a little bit of info. We got rent rolls. So it helps me in the business here in town. We know what to ask for. So I said, can I get a rent roll of the last year? I want to see, which tenants are paying on time and whatnot.
Yeah.
And we started seeing the seller's super unorganized, and he sent us a piece of paper with some scratch on it. And so we started thinking, oh, okay, But then we found out utilities were all paid for by the tenants, which is not super common in Indiana.
Huh, okay.
We got pictures of one of the properties, which confirmed our thoughts that actually they weren't that bad on the inside.
Okay.
Which is enough for us to have confidence to write an offer. And then finally, when we linked up with this agent that Jason referred, we found out that she had written an offer on the home, on the bundle a month ago. And the seller had responded at 125. So we knew the seller was ready to sell.
Right.
And that previous investor ended up not biting off that 4 houses because he was busy in another area. So he gave us the information we needed and ended up bowing out. Well, we ran our numbers, staying conservative with current rents and what we knew. We lined up private money to buy the homes. For people who don't know, one of the easiest ways, if you have the connection to buy a home for a discount, is to pay cash.
Right.
So we lined it up so that way we could pay cash and refinance out in a few months when the seasoning period of 6 months is up.
Yep.
And we're ultimately, if things all go as planned, it looks like we'll end up being in this property for really legitimately $0 out of pocket. And that's through private funding and knowing how to do that. And they're going to cash flow us just right off the bat without raising rents or anything, over $200 a piece. So
that's great.
It's a good setup. And for being zero money into it and with such low risk, it's a great starting point.
And if you can raise it $100 to $150 each.
Yeah, so they're at about $575 right now, and our broker told us that she could see them easily getting as high as $750.
That's amazing. Yeah. Okay, so you mentioned raising private money, and the first thing that comes to my mind, which I'm guessing some people are wondering, is how does a 21 and a 22-year-old convince people to give them $120,000? $125,000.
More than the purchase price.
Yes.
So here's how it works. We were talking about providing a service earlier to people, right? Work for free. I have spent the last 2 years helping experienced investors lock up property, and I did it for pretty cheap. I got paid more than I thought I should have, but really I didn't charge that much.
Okay.
And it was a great opportunity because I paid for my education. And then at the beginning of this year, I started tackling deals with just one partner or, even looking at them by myself. And what that does is now I had skin in the game. I had my own capital in it. I had managed to save up a little bit of money. Not a lot. $5,000 was getting invested into stuff, but nothing like $100,000. And I developed a small resume.
Okay.
I could say I worked on 8 properties. I flipped 3 properties and I've done 8 wholesales. Okay. That's a start. Then what I did was I actually went to a family member and said, hey, I don't know if you have any money, but if you do, I have an opportunity where I have a property that makes sense to flip. And if you were interested in loaning me $100,000, I would be willing to pay you 18%. 18% is
a lot. That's a lot.
Ridiculous amount of money. But I had such a big deal that I knew I could pay a bigger chunk to get that person to bite.
Okay.
And then what happened was I knew it was only a 2-month turnaround. And so I structured it that way. I ended up paying really not 18%. I paid less than that because that's just how it works. When you do it right, I was able to work out a few different things. I saved money and I ended up making more than I had originally accounted for. So then here's what happens. I give that client a great experience. Before that transaction was over, he introduced me to 3 friends interested in investing $200,000 each.
That's awesome.
So then what happened was I cashed him out and we did that. Now what happens is I have a call later today with a new client that's looking to invest in private capital. He's never met me in his life. He doesn't know anything about me. But what you do is you come in with a mindset of, I want to provide a service where you can invest $125,000. I will pay you an interest only, X% loan for the next 6 months through a presidential election, through the slow time of the year. Guaranteed you're going to get 6 months of that money working for you. And that's a service that not everybody's willing to provide. And so that's how you do it. And I think people with money don't care about age. They care about knowledge.
Yep. Well, I think we're taking a book out of like Gary Vee right now, doing things for free, doing things for very little amount so that in the future, people will pay you for that knowledge and that education, that experience, and which is exactly what it sounds like. You basically were providing services to people who knew more than you, or you were being a part of deals with people who knew more than you. You were able to attach your name to that, and then you're able to say, hey, look, see, I do have all this experience, even though it wasn't just Scott for all of those.
It doesn't need to be.
It doesn't have to be. Exactly. So that's And that is like, to me, honestly, that's one of the easiest ways I've ever heard that really broken down.
Mm-hmm.
And a 22-year-old just did that. So that's
for anybody interested in learning how to raise private capital. It is simple. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And maybe you and I can talk later on a different episode of either my podcast or yours, and let's do something combined, and because you've done it as well, and let's talk about how that works.
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be an awesome episode.
Yeah. I think the big thing for me with raising capital too is that I know that I have my expectations of where I need to be for my creative financing deals, for my flipping, and then my Airbnb, and they're not all. It's a lot of people get into my Airbnb deals because they're like, oh shoot, I can get like really good returns on my money, and then when I bring them like a creative finance, they're like, that's not like an Airbnb deal though. So I'm like kicking myself in the foot with this stuff.
Diversity.
Yeah, exactly.
Because this loan that I'm doing, where it's going to be this, I will tell you what, it's not 18%.
Yeah.
It's not even half that.
You couldn't even make money on 18% with that.
But here's the great part for the client is that he's going to be set up with something that is stable. And some investors are more risk averse, and understanding that I have investors who would rather make, 10, 12% or something on a riskier loan as a second, and others would like to be first position on a low interest, longer term loan. Yeah. And just like a bank, you need to have different products, and you need to be able to confidently explain what happens when things go wrong. But that's just how it starts.
Yeah, that's good. You both started with your real estate license. I know, Cade, you've been doing a lot of stuff within the office of Iron Key for a long time before you actually got your license. But where would you suggest people start if they want to get into real estate?
That's a tough question to answer. To be honest, it's dependent on each person. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people would be really well fit to get into the business without a license. Mm-hmm. I think depends on what you want to do. But if you're somebody who wants to work full-time in real estate, meaning part of your job is buying and selling other people's homes and personal residences, and other half is buying yourself personal residence or buying investments, I think it really matters just to the person. And I think keep in mind, everybody and their mother has their real estate license. Yeah. And just because you have it doesn't mean you're going to sell houses, and it's a cost, and it's also just like anything else, it's a responsibility. So we're held to a different level than somebody who doesn't have their license. Yep. So it matters to what you want to do.
Cool. Anything to add to that?
And this goes back to networking and providing value. My advice would be if you're genuinely interested and you want to get in, it doesn't have to be real estate, whatever you're wanting to do. Reach out to people who are doing what you're wanting to do already in that field. Scott just got connected with one of his past clients' sons who's wanting to get started in the business, and it's funny how those connections just work out like that. Like reach out to people who are doing what you're wanting to do and provide a service.
Are you telling me I don't have to go to college to get into real estate? No. What? Crazy.
College is a scam. Personal opinion.
I second that. All right, guys. So how can people get in contact with you?
Super easy. My email is scott@theclaysongroup.com.
Spell Clayson for us if you can.
CLAYSON. Or reach out to me on social media. I'm under Scott Farrow on everything. And then if you're interested, I am based out of the Keller Williams office in Fresno. Or if you want to reach out, I have a podcast called the Pursuit of Property Podcast with Cade, and you can reach us there at pursuitofproperty@gmail.com.
Perfect. And then Farrow is spelled Farrow.
Yes, but I still am an Egyptian ruler.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
Just kidding.
Yeah, so my email is similar, just Cade@theclaysongroup.com. Cade Barrett on Facebook, Instagram, all that good stuff. And then, like Scott said, we've got our podcast, the Pursuit of Property Podcast, and he named our email. So, those are all great ways to reach out.
Perfect. Any last words for our audience, guys?
If you're interested in any of the things that we talked about, please reach out. We are really interested in finding more topics as we reach our season 2 of our podcast, and we're going to be really considering over the next few weeks what we want to do. So if you guys are open to give us suggestions, we'd love Kyle's listener base to give us some ideas.
Perfect.
Yeah. And if you guys have any questions, Scott and I are an open book. That's why we started our podcast, is to be able to share our experiences and share our knowledge. So please feel free to reach out. Either one of us would be happy to help.
All right. Cade Barrett, Scott Farrow, thank you guys so much for being on the show and helping our audience to conquer the world of investing.
Thanks for having us on.
Show notes for this one, fearlesskyle.com/Cade Scott. So just both their first names. Cade is Cade, Scott spelled exactly like you would think. And if you want to follow them on both their podcast and social media, make sure to do so. They're helping you to be able to be real estate successes just like them at a young age or an older age. It really doesn't matter. They have a lot of different people that are on all walks of life on their podcast that I think would really resonate with anyone. And I think that that's the best way to be able to connect with them. Just get to them through social media or listen to their podcast. Thanks so much for joining us here on the Fearless Investor Podcast today, where we're helping you to conquer the world of investing. We'll see you next time.